You are listening to another bonus episode.
Bonus!
And this isn't your typical One Nation Under Crime. This is USBS, where we discuss the historical BS of the U.S.
But are we ever really typical?
No, never.
We are atypical.
True. These are the episodes that cover a wide variety of topics. Could be a person, could be an event. Either way, it'll be a good time. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Leah.
Let's get into it.
We're always a good time.
Leah doesn't know what this week's episode is about. Sometimes I tell her ahead of time.
Sometimes.
But this one I have not told her about.
I would say I'm on the edge of my seat, but I am so sitting back and relaxed with a cat on my lap. Actually, she's on my feet.
Well, Leah's going to be happy about this one this week.
I like being happy.
So, and it's Christmas week.
Christmas!
So we only have a couple of days left until Christmas. This is coming out on a Wednesday.
Yes.
So if you're getting your presents wrapped, get them wrapped.
Yep. Or if you're cooking,
whatever that may be.
Yep.
Use our soothing, wonderful voices to guide you through this happy or stressful time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're hiding from your family,
we're really good to take along for that too.
Yep.
So just throw in some headphones
or driving.
And it's fine. And this is going to be kind of a fun episode. So
maybe nobody dies.
There's a little touch here and there of some like cringe kind of things that have happened.
I'm not shocked.
But as far as most things, it's a fun topic. And I don't think a lot of people know some of this story.
Am I knowledgeable? Do you know?
In some aspects.
Oh, no, I'm
you
excited.
might be. You'll know what everybody else knows. That's what I'll say.
Oh.
And you'll see why. Our sources for this week, we have Smithsonian Magazine, always a good one, always helpful. The Hollywood Reporter, and I can't tell you the name of the next one. I'll just say it's a museum. So, you might hate him. You might love him.
Oh, dear.
Either way, he left a legacy that will be known and shared for years to come. The BS we are getting into this week is Phineas Taylor Barnum.
Oh, yay!
Most people have seen the movie The Greatest Showman, and there are many aspects of the movie that are accurate. It is a fantastic movie. If you've not seen it, I give you full permission to turn this episode off right now.
Absolutely.
Go to Disney Plus, watch it.
Yes.
Leah and I saw it in theaters twice.
Yes, and the second time was supposed to be a sing-along.
Supposed to be. It was not. But we did get a free movie out of it.
We did, because there were no words on the screen.
But we already knew the words. So
we met some really neat, really cool new friends.
So
us.
It was fun. Even though
this is the greatest show.
Whoa.
Okay, you're welcome.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you waited for. Anyways, weirdly enough, so good. Weirdly enough, and Hugh Jackman, Zac Efron,
Zendaya.
It's just, Michelle Williams,
and did her own stunts. Zendaya,
amazing.
And Zac did his too.
Yeah, he did too. Zac Efron. Yep.
Yeah, they did their own. Amazing, amazing,
absolutely amazing. So if you have seen The Greatest Showman, and I didn't put this in here, but this is just knowledge that I know. If you have seen The Greatest Showman, the character that Zendaya plays, and it was not real. She was created for the movie, and Philip Carlisle, aka Zac Efron, was also not a character. So
still a great movie.
Right. I will say The Greatest Showman is a very romanticized version.
Sure. Well, you have that creative liberty to create a lot of the story you want to tell.
A lot of it is true.
Sure.
About his dad is true, kind of how his dad had his job. did not see where his father died where he was young.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see anything about that part, or that he, did anything after that. It's very interesting. So either way, The Greatest Showman, such a good movie.
Yeah.
The music is amazing. It is.
And I can't remember the lady's name, but the lady that is the bearded lady with
is
the
it
voice.
Keela or Kayla Settle?
It's Keela.
Keela Settle.
Keela Settle. I couldn't remember her name.
She was in Waitress. She's the first cast of Waitress on Broadway.
Her
wonderful.
Voice. Oh my goodness.
She is. That was a real character. So
and she's amazing.
She is amazing. She was very good. The story of the bearded lady is not quite the same. So we'll get into it.
Yes, but we couldn't talk about the movie without naming those specific characters because the talent in that movie, is amazing, and the music. Look. If I'm having a day, I'll put in Hamilton a lot if I'm having a day. I may have had a moment last week, and I may have texted Kayla in the middle of Target and said, okay, I'm at a 7.5. I can't breathe. All the things just came crashing down on me, and so I had to drive
and I
home.
both had moments like that last week.
We did. Thank goodness it wasn't the same day.
I know. We were in sync with one another. It was like a day apart, though.
But I put on Hamilton on the way home, but The Greatest Showman is another really good soundtrack because, for me, I have to distract myself, and I also like singing. It's a physical way to get that energy out for me. That is one way that I have found that I can get some of my anxiety and my nervous energy out if I'm having those moments. And y'all, I had to drive home, and it was like 30 minutes, and you got to get home, and you got to get that anxiety and that energy out. And so Kayla was like, just breathe. And I was like, I put on Hamilton. That's, I'm getting that out. And then she told me to try to perfect Guns and Ships. I was like, no, that will get me all the way to a 10. We don't want that. Yes. But yeah, The Greatest Showman would be a really good one for me to put on.
Good. The movie is just... And not even so much the movie, the cinematography.
Yes, all of it.
Like when Finn, and in the movie she calls him Finn, but when Finn and Charity are dancing in the beginning, and she goes to go off the roof. Story. Oh my gosh.
When it shows the progression of their love story.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And I love Michelle Williams in that movie.
If we haven't made you stop to go watch it, what's wrong
it's
with
on
you?
Disney Plus. So go. I would say I'll give you my password, but I won't. I already have a lot of many devices. I already have a lot of people that use my logins for stuff. So.
No, people don't use your logins. You just log into a lot of devices.
Yep. I live in a lot of places all at once. It's crazy. I'm a witch.
She's a witch. She turned me into a newt.
And a ghost. It's just how I live my life, And it would be rude of someone to judge that. So
there you go.
So yeah, go watch it if you haven't. It's so good. Soundtrack is amazing. Everything's amazing.
All the good things. 5 stars.
It's just such a good, and it's a good. So when I watch movies a lot of time with my daughter, I will ask her, not so much like, what did that teach you? Or like, what is that? But if it's a movie that there is like an underlying lesson to the movie, I'll ask her and I'll say, well, what do you think about, this, or what do you think should have happened, or what?
Right. Just see if she gets it.
Yeah. And so, like she loves The Nightmare Before Christmas. And so I'll ask her, not every time, but sometimes I'll say, well, what does that mean for Jack? Like, what does that mean for Jack at the end of the movie? And she'll go, that he should have just been himself all along. And I'm like, exactly. You always need to be yourself. And then like with The Greatest Showman, she knows too, as I said, what does this tell you? What is this movie kind of, what do you think? And she was watching it and she goes, really? He's really nice. Don't like money? And I was like, not quite. But it was funny. So yeah, usually, but it is a very good story of don't forget your roots. Don't forget where you came from.
Right.
And don't forget the people who got you there.
Right.
And it's such a good just story throughout.
From now
I know. Oh gosh, such a good song. It's amazing. A lot of really good stuff in there.
Yes.
So Phineas Taylor Barnum, aka P.T. Barnum, was born in Bethel, Connecticut on July 5th of 1810. We did talk about his births and his two births, I guess, in the episode that we had in 1810. His mother was Irene Taylor and his father was Philo Barnum. His dad was an innkeeper, tailor, and a storekeeper. And in The Greatest Showman, you see that he's a tailor.
Mm-hmm.
He was named after his grandfather, Phineas Taylor, who was a legislator, landowner, justice of the peace, and lottery schemer.
Huh.
Just that.
They all went together until that last thing.
Young Barnum began school at the age of 6, and he excelled in math, often using the excuse of, quote, head work as a way of avoiding farming duties on the family farm.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't love the idea of farm life and often dreamed of more for himself, which led him to own a sheep and calf at only the age of 12.
Huh.
He sold cherry rum to the soldiers, and he was hired to help herd a cattle drive to Brooklyn. Weird cattle in Brooklyn. I can't see it. This cattle drive was the beginning of a lifelong adventure of studying the diversity in people and the diversity in major cities. P.T. once said about this time in his life, quote, "It was clear to my mind that my proper position in the busy world was not yet reached. I had displayed the faculty of getting money as well as getting rid of it. But the business for which I was destined had not yet come to me." Barnum went on to have several businesses, including a general store, a book auctioning trading company, real estate ventures, and he had a statewide lottery network. On November 8th of 1829, Barnum married Charity Hallett. And together, the couple had 4 children: Caroline Cornelia, Helen Maria, Frances Irene, and Pauline Taylor. In the same year of his marriage, he also started a weekly newspaper called the Herald of Freedom in Danbury, Connecticut. His paper was geared more towards those who were a major part of the church, and the articles against the elders of local churches led to libel suits that put him in jail for 2 months.
Oh, dear.
He went on to sell his general store in 1834 and became a major proponent of the freedom of speech movement. Now, before we get into the story that everyone is most familiar with, I got to go ahead and say Barnum was not an angel that the movie made him out to be.
Well, I mean, they gloss over things.
That's
understatement.
Yes. He's very problematic in some ways. There is a big argument that he exploited a lot of people for financial gain.
Well, I mean, duh.
But there's arguments for both sides of that as well, because he also paid those people very well. So,
and there's 2 sides to every coin.
There is. This first story is one that really irritates me. So, in 1835, Barnum started his career as a showman at the age of only 25. His first exhibition was a woman named Joyce Heth. Slavery was illegal in New York by this point, but Barnum used a loophole that allowed him to, quote, lease her for $1,000.
Nice.
Joyce,
that was said with sarcasm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joyce was, well, it did say lease. It did not say purchase. So I don't know. But Joyce was a black woman who was almost completely paralyzed and only had the ability to talk and partially move her right arm. The posters about her said, quote, "Joyce Heth is unquestionably the most astonishing and interesting curiosity in the world. She was the slave of Augustine Washington, who was the father of George Washington, and was the first person who put clothes on the unconscious infant who, in after days, led our heroic fathers on to glory, to victory, and freedom. To use her own language when speaking to the illustrious father of this country, she raised him. Joyce Heth was born in the year 1674 and has consequently now arrived at the astonishing age of 161 years old.
Oh, my. He exaggerated a little, I think.
It gets worse. When Joyce died only a year after she was leased to Barnum, Barnum had a doctor named David Rogers perform the autopsy of Joyce in front of a crowd of 1,500 people and charged 50 cents for admission.
That's worse than a public hanging.
Rogers declared the age claim of Joyce a fraud, but Barnum insisted that the autopsy victim was another person and that Joyce was actually alive and on tour in Europe. Several years later, Barnum admitted that it was a hoax. The autopsy of Joyce was actually Joyce, and she was actually 79 when she died. So, there's that. Over the years, Barnum had a group of people that made up his troupe that he called Barnum's Grand Scientific and Musical Theater. Then, the Panic of 1837 came along, and a few years of circumstance followed the theater. He decided to purchase the Scudder's American Museum in 1841, and after this purchase, he improved and upgraded the attractions and renamed it Barnum's American Museum. At this time, amusement attractions were not even like a thought in the public eye, and doing something just for the point of entertainment wasn't highly sought after. Most even considered it inappropriate, and society held itself to a higher standard of, quote, moral and civil behavior. Barnum promoted the museum as a place for family entertainment, enlightenment, and instructive amusement. Soon the museum became a haven for advancing public knowledge for music, literature, art, marvels of the natural world, and specialized in natural curiosities right beside historical and artistic exhibitions. The range of acts or exhibits included stuffed animals, like taxidermied animals, giants, little people, jugglers, magicians, exotic women, models of cities or detailed battles, and many live animals. According to the Barnum Museum website, that was the website that I couldn't say earlier.
Well, makes sense. Makes sense.
Quote, a wax figure department to produce the likeness of notable personalities of the day, a taxidermy department, and aquarium, the aquarium comes later, were in operation, and an elaborate set design department satisfied the demand for an active public theater. Amidst the performers, lecturers, and live curiosities were a host of exhibitors demonstrating various skills and crafts, as well as new technological devices, a continual stream of changing exhibitions ranging from talking machines, panoramas of Niagara Falls, Paris, and Peru, ivory carvers, problematic, glass blowers, sewing machine operators, musicians, and ballerinas all entertained the masses.
Can I say glass blowing?
So fascinating.
Amazing.
It's crazy.
I could sit and watch. I think we were in Chattanooga, and my husband and I went into a glass blower's store, like shop, and you could do your own. I didn't do that, but we just watched, and it was just absolutely amazing. Like what they can do, just watching them. It's amazing to me.
It really is.
Like I'll watch videos. I'll be scrolling Facebook, and there'll be a glassmaker video, and it just amazes me.
Yes, I've seen some glass blowing that is crazy. For those people who don't know, you can go to Dollywood,
probably
in Tennessee, and you can see people blow glass. It's really cool.
And also, my husband and I have started watching a show called Forged in Fire,
Mhm.
and it's blade making. It's
Yeah, like right.
blacksmithing. Um, it amazes me. Like they give them a specific kind of blade to make, and I could watch that all day long.
It's really cool.
Oh my gosh, it just amazes me.
Ironwork. It's
Yes,
really cool. The way
yes.
that they do all of that's very
Mhm.
interesting. Barnum's American Museum was New York City's most popular attraction for 23 years. There was a lighthouse light that he had on the building that drew more people into the area at night.
Hmm.
And he put flags all around the building to bring more attention to it during the day. The sides of the building had massive painted posters in the upper windows that advertised the exhibits that pedestrians could see inside. The roof of the building was a garden with a view of the city, and hot air balloon rides were done daily.
Bucket list item for me, by
That
the
just
way.
sounds really cool. Barnum offered the chance to, quote, explore the irrational, examine imaginative possibilities, and derive opinions and truths. In 1842, a creature, I don't know what this is, with the body of a monkey and the tail of a fish known as the Fiji Mermaid was introduced. Barnum leased it from a fellow museum owner in Boston named Moses Kimball. Kimball became one of his best friends, confidants, and collaborators. Barnum justified his hoaxes by saying that they were meant to draw attention to the museum. He said, quote, I don't believe in duping the public, but I believe in first attracting and then pleasing them.
Hmm.
The bearded lady's name was actually Annie Jones, which is weird because Anne in the movie. So, anyways,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
she was born in Virginia in 1865. Jones began her career at age 1.
Ooh.
She was exhibited in Barnum's museum as the infant Isou. After a short but successful stint in New York, Barnum soon offered Jones's parents a weekly contract that included a $150 salary. That's a lot of money
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
Um, that's crazy. While Jones spent much of her 36-year career with Barnum in his greatest show on earth, she also came to be known for her musical talents and gracious etiquette. So, part of that's true about her from the movie.
Gracious etiquette.
Barnum followed these acts by exhibiting Charles Sherwood Stratton, the little person who was eventually called General Tom Thumb, or Man in Miniature. He was advertised as, quote, the smallest person that ever walked alone. He was then 4 years old, but in advertising, they put that he was 11. He was 25 inches tall and only weighed 15 pounds. Even at 4, that's still very small.
Yeah.
Barnum said about Stratton, quote, after seeing him and talking to him, I am determined to secure his services from his parents and to exhibit him publicly. Gross. Arrangements were quickly made with the boy's parents to hire their son for $3 a week, which included room, board, and travel for the boy and his mother while in New York. That's about $100 a week today.
Mm-hmm.
After Stratton's first month with Barnum, his salary was increased to $7 or $237 a week. And later, he was so popular that Barnum was paying him $25 a week, which is the equivalent of $847 today. Most people don't make that in a week now.
Yeah.
With heavy coaching and natural talent, the boy was taught to imitate people from Hercules to Napoleon. He was drinking wine by the time he was 5 and smoking cigars by the age of 7.
That's not cool.
The popularity of the museum had grown at such a rate that Barnum arranged a tour of England where the museum company was given an audience with Queen Victoria. This opened the doors to visits from royalty throughout Europe, including the Tsar of Russia, and enabled Barnum to acquire new attractions. The tour was called a, quote, most surprising and delightful curiosities the world has ever produced. During this time, he went on a spending spree and bought a bunch of other museums, including Rembrandt Peale's Museum in Philadelphia, which was the nation's first major museum ever. By late 1846, Barnum's museum was drawing around 400,000 visitors a year.
That's just a couple.
Then came the Swedish Nightingale, Jenny Lind. She was extremely popular already, and while on the European leg of the Tom Thumb tour, Barnum quickly learned of her fame. While Barnum liked professionally catering to the amusement of the masses, he said, quote, I myself relished a higher grade of amusement, and I was frequent attendant at the opera, first-class concerts, lectures, and the like.
So this is when he started getting highfalutin.
Mm-hmm. Barnum approached her to sing in America at $1,000 a night for 150 nights.
Goodness.
Yeah. And that's before like changing it to current math. Like
that's a whole heck of a lot of money.
Yeah. Lind demanded the fee in advance, and Barnum agreed. This allowed her to raise funds for charities, principally endowing schools for poor children in Sweden. The contract also gave Lind the opportunity of withdrawing from the tour after 60 or 100 performances, paying Barnum $25,000 if she pulled out. Lind went to America in September of 1850, but she was a celebrity before she even arrived because of Barnum's advertisement. Almost 40,000 people greeted her at the docks, and another 20,000 were waiting at her hotel. The New York Herald declared, quote, Jenny Lind is the most popular woman in the world at this point. Barnum confesses in his autobiography that his anticipation and that of the public might be too high to be realized, quote, and hints that there would be a reaction after the first concert, but I was happily disappointed. The transcendent musical genius of the Swedish Nightingale was superior to all that fancy could paint. Lind quickly realized how much money Barnum stood to make from the tour, and she insisted on a new agreement, which she signed on September 3rd of 1850. This gave her the original fee plus the remainder of each concert's profits after Barnum's $5,500 management fee. She was determined to accumulate as much money as possible for her charities. This is one part of the film that was absolutely correct. All of her money did go to charity.
Well, that's good.
Yes. The tour began with a concert at Castle Garden on September 11th, 1850, and it was a major success, recouping Barnum 4 times his investment into it. So the part of the movie where he says, like, it'll ruin me if you leave, that was not true.
Okay.
By the first concert, he had already gotten back his money 4 times over.
But for cinematic reasons and time.
He does lose his money, but differently.
Right.
So I'm guessing that's why.
Yeah.
Washington Irving proclaimed, quote, she is enough to counterbalance of herself all the evil that the world is threatened with by the great convention of women. So God save Jenny Lind. Tickets for some of her concerts were in such demand that Barnum sold them at a public auction. The frenzy over Jenny Lind was so high that it was called Lind Mania. Barnum had up to 26 journalists on his payroll, and he would specifically send them ahead to the next city to drum up more excitement for Lind's arrival. Once they were done traveling in New York, they went down the East Coast into the southern states and then to Cuba. Eventually, Lind became disgusted with Barnum's marketing of the tour, and she invoked her contractual right to sever ties with him. But this wasn't the end of Lind's tour. She simply decided to manage it on her own without Barnum's name tied to it. They parted amicably, and she continued the tour for nearly a year under her own management. Lind gave 93 concerts in America for Barnum, earning her about $350,000 then, while Barnum netted $500,000, equaling $13.5 million today.
Pocket change.
Right? Got that in the bank. Barnum's next challenge to take on was to change public attitudes about the theater, which was widely seen as a den of evil.
Well,
he wanted to position theaters as palaces of enlightenment and amusement, and as a respectable middle-class entertainment place. He built New York City's largest and most modern theater, and he named it the Moral Lecture Room. He hoped that this would avoid seedy connotations and attract the family crowd and win the approval of the moral crusaders in New York City. He started with the nation's first theatrical matinee to encourage families and to lessen the fear of crime since it was during the day. He put on melodramas, historical plays, and he had highly regarded actors in them. He also kind of watered down Shakespearean and the book that they eventually turned into a play, Uncle Tom's Cabin, to make them family entertainment. He organized flower shows, beauty contests, dog shows, and poultry contests. But the most popular were baby contests.
Oh, like beauty contests.
Such as the fattest baby or the handsomest twins. In 1853, he started the pictorial weekly newspaper Illustrated News. He completed his autobiography a year later, which sold more than 1 million copies over the course of its numerous revisions. It's said that Mark Twain loved the book, but the British Examiner thought it trashy and offensive and wrote that it inspired, quote, nothing but sensations of disgust and sincere pity for the wretched man who compiled it.
Well,
so there's that.
Tell us how you think. How you really feel.
In the early 1850s, Barnum decided to invest in developing his adopted hometown of East Bridgeport, Connecticut. He gave out several loans to companies to encourage them to move to the area, including the Jerome Clock Company. Unfortunately, the company went bankrupt in 1856, and they took almost all of Barnum's wealth with them.
Oh, no.
Yeah. There were 4 years of litigation and embarrassment for Barnum, and Ralph Waldo Emerson said that this showed, quote, the gods visible again. And other critics also celebrated the public embarrassment that Barnum was facing.
Oh, that's not nice.
Yeah. Charles Stratton, you'll remember him from before, he was who they called Tom Thumb, offered his services to Barnum since Stratton was touring on his own at that time. The two started another European tour, and Barnum started a lecture tour as a speak for the temperance movement, so no alcohol. This proved to be successful for Barnum, and by 1860, he had pulled himself out of debt, and he built a new mansion called Lindencroft. And he regained ownership of the museum after it was repossessed by the bank. After this tremendous comeback, Barnum created America's first aquarium, and he expanded the wax figure department of his current museum. His, quote, 7 grand salons demonstrated the 7 wonders of the world. The buildings of the museum expanded, and he published, quote, the guidebook to the museum, which claimed that it had 850,000 curiosities. Don't know about that.
Just 1 or 2.
This was when the Siamese twins, Chang and Ing, came out of retirement because they needed to send their numerous children to college. Let me explain.
Wow.
Chang and Ing Bunker were born in 1811 in Siam, which is now Thailand, and the term Siamese twins was derived from their case. They were joined by the areas around their xiphoid process, which if you have your sternum, it's the very bottom piece of your sternum where your ribs kind of separate.
Okay.
Right there. They were conjoined right there.
And they have kids.
The brothers were exhibited for years as curiosities and were, quote, 2 of the 19th century's most studied human beings. Originally, the sentiment towards the twins was was one of sympathy, and after 3 years of touring the United States with their managers, they decided to branch out on their own, thinking that their managers were stealing money from them. In 1839, they quit touring completely and settled near Mount Airy, North Carolina.
I know something about that place. Do you know something about that place?
I don't know.
That is where Mayberry is modeled after.
Oh, yeah. I did know that.
Okay.
They spoke extremely clear English, and they became American citizens. They, quote, bought, I hate that word, slaves, married local sisters, and fathered 21 children. The families of the brothers lived in separate houses, and the twins took alternating 3 days stays at each house.
Oh, no.
Once they came out of retirement, they appeared at Barnum's Museum for 6 weeks. In 1862, he discovered giantess Anna Swan and Commodore Nutt, a new Tom Thumb, with whom Barnum visited President Abraham Lincoln at the White House. During the Civil War, the museum drew large audiences, of course, trying to seek some kind of distraction from conflict. He added pro-unionist exhibits, lectures, and dramas. And he hired Pauline Cushman in 1864, who was an actress who had served as a spy for the Union, and she was there to lecture about her thrilling adventures behind Confederate lines.
Well, it makes sense that she would be an actress. That totally makes sense.
Barnum's Unionist sympathies incited a Confederate sympathizer to start a fire in 1864.
Oh, dear.
Barnum's American Museum burned to the ground on July 13th, 1865, from a fire of unknown origin as well.
That's no good.
Barnum reestablished it at another location in New York City, but it was also destroyed by a fire in 1868. The loss was too great the second time, and Barnum retired from the museum business. So, most people might believe that Barnum started in the circus business at a younger age than he actually did. He was 60 when he established P.T. Barnum's Grand Traveling Museum, Menagerie, Caravan, and Hippodrome. A hippodrome is horse racing. I had to look that up.
Huh.
And it was in Delavan, Wisconsin in 1870. His wife, Charity, died on November 19th of 1873. And he quickly remarried a woman named Nancy Fish the next year.
Well,
she was the daughter of a close friend of his, John Fish. Would you like to guess how much younger than him Nancy was?
By the way you say that, she's probably like the age of one of his kids.
40 years younger than him.
Well, he
so
was rich.
Younger than his kids.
He was rich.
Nope. So he started... Wait, what?
I'm saying like that was the draw for her, probably.
Right. He started the circus with William Cameron Coop, and it was a traveling circus, menagerie, and, quote, museum of freaks. The circus went through several names, including P.T. Barnum's Traveling World Fair and Great Roman Hippodrome, then P.T. Barnum's Greatest Show on Earth and the London Circus, Sanger's Royal British Menagerie, and the Grand International Allied Shows Unite. That is all one name.
Ooh, that's a big
a lot
name.
to paint. So... Then, after an 1881 merger with James Bailey and James L. Hutchinson, the name was finally settled on Barnum and Bailey. This was the first circus to exhibit 3 rings. The first primary attraction was Jumbo, an African elephant that Barnum purchased from the London Zoo. The Barnum and Bailey Circus had similar attractions to the original Barnum Museum, including acrobats, I put this in quotes, quote, freak shows, and General Tom Thumb. There were fires, train disasters, and major setbacks to the operation, but Barnum insisted on pushing forward and growing the circus. Barnum and Bailey took a hiatus from their partnership from 1885 to 1888 with the Barnum and Bailey Greatest Show on Earth, and then just the Barnum and Bailey Circus, which toured the world. Barnum became the first circus owner to move his circus by train and the first to own his own train.
Ooh.
Barnum was called, quote, the Shakespeare of advertising due to his impressive and innovative ideas. Barnum wrote several books throughout his life, including The Life of P.T. Barnum, The Humbugs of the World, Struggles and Triumphs, Forest and Jungle, or Thrilling Adventures in All Quarters of the Globe and the Art of Money Getting.
That's a long title.
A few years. Barnum was referred to as, quote, the Prince of Humbugs, and he saw nothing wrong in entertainers or vendors using hoaxes, or humbug as he called them, in promotional material as long as the public was getting value for their money. However, he was disdainful of those who made money through fraud, especially the spiritualist mediums popular in this day. He testified against noted spirit photographer William H. Mumler in his trial for fraud, and he exposed the tricks of the trade used by mediums to cheat those who were mourning their loved ones. He offered $500 or $8,000 in 2021 to any medium who could prove power to communicate with the dead. Barnum was also heavily involved in politics in his life and focused on race issues, slavery, and separatism leading up to the Civil War. Barnum claims that, quote, politics were always distasteful to me. Yet he was elected to the Connecticut legislature in 1865 as Republican representative for Fairfield and served 4 terms. He acknowledged that he had owned slaves when he lived in the South. And just a bit of a trigger. This is not great. Quote, I whipped my slaves. I ought to have been whipped 1,000 times for this myself. But then I was a Democrat, one of those nondescript Democrats who were Northern men with Southern principles. In 1875, he worked as the mayor of Bridgeport, Connecticut, to improve the water supply, bring gas lighting to the streets, and enforce liquor and sex work laws. He was instrumental in starting Bridgeport Hospital, which was founded in 1878, and he served as the first president on the board. Phineas Taylor Barnum died of a stroke in his home on April 7th of 1891. He is buried in Mountain Grove Cemetery that he designed in Bridgeport, Connecticut. At his death, critics praised Barnum for good works and called him an icon of American spirit and ingenuity. He asked the Evening Sun to print his obituary just prior to his death so that he might read it. On April 7th of 1891, Barnum asked about the box office receipts for the day, and only a few hours later, he was dead.
Aww.
The Barna Museum is located in Bridgeport today. It was conceived and constructed by P.T. Barnum himself. The museum has been open since 1893 and is still running today.
That's cool.
Currently, the museum is not accepting visitors as they are working on COVID protocol measures for the state of Connecticut. Typically, the museum is open year-round on Thursdays and Fridays from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., and admission is free, while donations are appreciated. As for the circus, you may be asking yourself, after a 146-year run, the world-famous Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus closed for good in 2017. The emotional retirement of the beloved circus came after years of trying to distance itself from a problematic history, most notably the care of the animals featured in the circus show. But the greatest show on earth is coming back.
What? Because I have to tell you, Jody and I, my sister and I, have taken her older 2 boys to the circus several times, but her youngest, who came along several years after her older 2 were born, we've never taken him to the circus, and I have many times lamented the fact that we've never taken him to the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, Greatest Show on Earth. because that's something that we've done with the boys, and I've always been so sad that we've never done that. So please do go on. I am intrigued and excited.
I figured you would be.
Very. Do you see my eyes sparkling?
I do. I will say there will be no animal performers. And under the parent company, Feld Entertainment, the show will have immersive technology and human performers. Feld Entertainment is known for Disney on Ice and Monster Jam shows around the United States, including the Marvel action, live action and all of that. Special effects are going to help carry the show forward with projection mapping in place of live animals like they do in their Jurassic World show. So it's going to have the illusion of animals while not physically having animals.
I mean, that's cool.
Well, it was just the only way that they could bring it back was doing it this way.
I know.
It'll still be really cool, though. From everything that I saw, it looks like it's going to be pretty unique as far as what it was before.
Well,
and it's going to be very similar with the same acts, like the motorcycles and all of that will be very similar. They're just not going to have, it says specifically, live animals.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's because they said like Jurassic World, which is a very, like, it's massive projections of like, huge things. So I'm guessing that's what it's going to be more of.
Well, and my mom and I went to an exhibit called Beyond Van Gogh yesterday. And oh my goodness, if you are in a city that this exhibit comes to, you need to go. Guys, amazing. It's the artist Van Gogh, and they take his works. First, you walk through, and it tells kind of the history of his life, like, how he grew up and some quotes from letters between him and his brother and stuff. And then you go into a room, and it's, I guess, 20 feet tall. I don't know how tall. I don't measure well. And it's projections of his artwork, but they also kind of animate it in a way, and it's immersive, and you are like,
that's what it sounds like this is gonna be.
So I mean,
so it sounds like it's gonna be pretty cool.
Yes, and I'm excited, but I mean, y'all, the elephants, I understand that there is some mistreatment, and that is on the road all the time. That is a sad
it's very
life.
Stressful.
It's very stressful,
animals.
and I get that.
Yeah.
I totally do.
I
love the critters.
It is a bit of nostalgia.
Exactly.
To think back to that. And
exactly.
and
the horses, and I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. But, and then too, like you said, we also understand because at most, sometimes they're in the same place for maybe 2 weeks and then they're gone again.
And it's stressful, so, and it's, they don't get to be out in the grass. Right. And I understand that.
I'm okay with it. I'm curious to see what it's going to be. It's going to be good.
I'm curious. And I'm excited that it's coming back.
Yes. The company announced that the show will be returning in 2023, and the official announcement of show dates will be in 2022.
I am here for that.
And that is the story of Phineas Taylor Barnum.
That's a good note to end on.
That is. I thought that it was fun. So we have a website where you can find anything USBS and all ONUC information you are looking for. It's onenationundercrime.com, and honestly, you can find anything that you need to for us there as far as how to get in touch with us, how to reach us, where to follow us. Go leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We do have a Patreon that this show is moving over to in the next 2 weeks, actually. So if you want more of these episodes, which we know that you do.
Who doesn't want more of us?
Right? Go over to Patreon and go ahead and become a subscriber so you can be the first one to get those episodes. Thank you guys for listening to another bonus episode of USBS. We will see you here next time with more BS
from the US.
And always remember, there isn't always liberty and justice for all. Goodbye.
Bye.